Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cultured Corner YouTube channel, which is the official YouTube home space for Cultured Waste. We are a waste-bead empowerment company who are all about empowering yourself through self-love, body positivity and confidence. Today, I'm going to be talking about womanhood. This was actually supposed to be a sound check, but here we are. Hopefully y'all can hear. Let me check the mic. So I was right, you guys can actually hear me. Today's video is all about womanhood, and so there's been a lot of stuff online and offline, but online mainly, about how a woman is supposed to be, how a man is supposed to be, what a woman should expect from a man, what a man should expect from a woman, or woman and woman, or man and man, depending on what your sexual preferences are. There's also been like ads and stuff. Like there was this ad really frustrating me, and there's two. There's one, and it's this man's voice talking about how women shouldn't call themselves queens. And then there's another one of a woman's voice saying how men shouldn't call themselves alphas. And I'm like, they did this on purpose, because obviously I'm going to get triggered of the fact of why shouldn't I call myself a queen? And secondly, why is it a man speaking? So stay aware that they're trying to cause war. But anyway, I wanted to talk about today the ways in which the concept of womanhood has evolved over time. And so there's some people who will say they are a modern type of woman. There's some people who say they're a old school type of girl. And the funniest thing is, I feel so confused within the whole thing, because I have such an old soul, which everyone reminds me of everywhere I go, right? But in the same breath, they'll call me a modern woman because I'm educated and I work for myself, and you honestly 9 times out of 10 can't tell me what to do.
This is why I don't date Ebonies. You don't know how to listen. You don't know how to get put in your place.
So yeah, we're going to be looking at it as a concept. And what I did was, of course, I utilized AI to give me some prompts in terms of how was womanhood defined? What kind of things do we normally look at when we look at the role of a woman in society? Okay. The first thing I wanted to start with is called the window of tolerance. And I actually found out about this through an introduction session for my counselling. And when I Googled it, it says the optimal range of emotional arousal within which a person can function effectively, regulate emotions, and handle daily stresses. And basically what Michelle was saying to me is that when you go through a lot of trauma, I was going to say because of my trauma, my window of tolerance will be like a lot smaller in terms of what I can handle before it becomes too much, or before I become really destimulated. I don't know what word to use for that. But yeah. And so I have like this little diagram thing. I will replicate it on the screen for you. I don't think we're going to be able to see my notes. Let's see. So I basically drew it like this, and this is your window of tolerance, and then you've got the upper bit and the lower bit. So within the actual window of tolerance, your body is in its optimal state, and it can access both reason and emotion, and you're mentally engaged. As soon as you start to become hyper aroused, let me put my phone on silent, sorry about that. Above the window of tolerance is hyper arousal. And that's when you can't calm down. And so you can become over creative, unclear thinking. So you won't be thinking clearly, and you become emotionally distressed. And the way to come down from hyper arousal, hyper arousal is using mindfulness. So being aware of each thing that you're doing and choosing, grounding yourself, and also breath work. And then under the window of tolerance is hypo arousal. And the funniest thing is, when she said, I think she said hypo first, but I thought she said hyper. So when she said hyper again, I was like, huh, what's going on here? But it's actually hypo. And it's when you're starting to shut down. And so you can start to feel depressed, lethargic, numb, and unmotivated. And the way to raise your vibration again after is to use mindfulness, breathwork, and physical activity to get your system going. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because obviously I have a lot of trauma, which I've spoken about on this channel, but something I recently watched a video about was the fact that like small stresses that we've had to deal with over time can over time become traumatic as well. And because women have been suppressed for so long in terms of now we're able to work and now we're able to do this and now we're able to do that. And it's not because we didn't have the capability before. It's because society was set up in a way to make us domesticated. And because of that, our window of tolerance was very small. So if we get to experience something outside of our domestic lives, we'll probably be hyper aroused. And when it comes to things that maybe we might be excited about, our passions and things of that nature, we might have been hypo aroused because that wasn't the main focus, or we just wasn't encouraged to do things for ourselves. And so I kind of came up with 3 things that I feel like your window of tolerance can be impacted by. The first one is inner thoughts and feels, and then the impacts of trauma. So all about your self-talk and your relationship with yourself. And so because mine wasn't so nice, my window of tolerance was really small, because a lot of the times I'd be guilting myself or shaming myself. I didn't feel like I deserved to experience things that I wanted to do. Even in business, even after starting my business, I still had this ruckus going on in my head that I'm dealing with and processing now, hence the YouTube channel. But that was the first thing that I said it can be impacted by. The second part was by relationship dynamics and your environment around you. So when I was younger, something that would be within my window of tolerance that will allow me to access my reason and emotion was playing out. I was really rough. Till this day, I like to climb trees and things like that. But a lot of older people, from parents to just people, the village that raised me, and I see people doing it now to younger girls as well. Why so boisterous? Why can't you behave like a girl? Why can't you just play like a girl? And it's like, there's no set way for you to be, if that makes sense, especially when it comes to playing. And we take that into our adulthood in terms of what we're allowed to do, the things that we're allowed to enjoy, and whether or not it's an activity for women. In the gym today, obviously Pure Gym has a women's section, thank goodness, because I don't want to get moved to when I'm doing my squats, if you know what I mean. But anyway, and it says on the wall, it's like a warning notice. I should have written it down because I don't remember exactly the wording. But it literally says that they've removed the heavier weights from the women's section. And I was gonna say, why? There's women who can lift pounds and pounds and pounds over a guy, just a random guy. And it's not about, she's like, we shouldn't single that woman out. We should give people the opportunity to lift as heavy as they want to, regardless of what your gender is. Like, excuse me, hello, 2026, can you imagine? But anyway, the third thing that can impact your window of tolerance is society and cultural expectations. And so that kind of stems off of your relationship dynamics and environment. Even if you grew up in a household, in a family where you were given your sovereignty as a woman, you're still going to go out in the world and realize, people don't really like that. People feel like I should be in my place and be small and da-da-da-da-da. And that can impact how you feel about the things that you're experiencing. And also, what I want to say is really important is the window of tolerance. Remember, it says it's the optimal space in which you can access both reason and emotion, and you're mentally engaged. But for a lot of times, they want us to play stupid. And so we're not able to be in that optimum space. And yeah, it's just not really great. So how can we start to look at our own window of tolerance and the different things that may impact it? I have 5 topics here. The first one is gender equality perspective. The second one is about traditional gender roles. The third one is about rapidly changing societies. The fourth, religious and cultural interpretations. And the fifth is about women as leaders and change makers. If we start with the gender equality perspective, it's about equal rights, opportunities, and representation. And over time, we can definitely say that there's a lot more representation. The rights, they're equalizing. Because for a lot of people, they'll say, oh, women can work jobs that men can work now and things like this, but there's still going to be like pay gaps, or even you could be in that position, but they might not respect your input as much as they respect the input of a man. A lot of the times when I came up with stuff, they thought it came from a man somewhere, and I'm like, okay, why would you think that? Like, I don't have my own ability to come up with stuff. And so what I put this down to, because not everyone is in the position to go for their career and and that's unfortunate. But well, it's unfortunate to me because that's what I want for myself, but I want to make it clear that not every woman wants that. Some women do want to be able to be domesticated, just like there's some men who want to be domesticated. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with it. But saying that that is someone's like destined role because of their gender is just silly. And so what I put when it comes to gender equality perspective is the freedom over your own personal decisions. Now, for me personally, it took me sitting down the other day and realizing the reason why I get so overwhelmed when I have to make a choice, and I mean any choice. What do you want to drink? What do you want to eat? Blue or yellow? And I'm like, it's because I wasn't really given the opportunity to make choices for myself when I was growing up. It was always just take what you're handed. These decisions are made for you. And then you kind of see your male family members and they get to choose everything. And it's kind of like, it's frustrating. Try not to compare myself. Try to do my own thing. But again, even when you do get to the point of making your own decisions, everyone feels like they have the right to tell you, you can't do that. And I was speaking to my dad last year, and I was speaking about this man. I was 26 and the man was 33, and I'm saying, listen, he's trying to come over here and tell me that, oh, we can go on a few dates and then you can move into my house. And I'm like, bro, what if I'm a murderer? Like, you can't just do that because I'm a nice girl and you think that I'm gonna come in. He said something like, oh, and this is even going into some of the other bits, but I'm going to tell the story. There's a purpose behind it. He was saying that it's okay, I shouldn't worry because if I'm on my period or something, then he'll take over the cooking. And so obviously I'm having this conversation with my dad, like, can you imagine this man? And my dad's response is, oh, but you don't listen to men anyway. And I'm like, really? Is that what you heard from that? Even as your daughter, like, obviously how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if that's how he sees women, that's how he's going to see his daughters anyway. But you don't hear the fact that this man feels like he can come into my life after I've been in life for 27 years. He doesn't know me from Bob, Steve or Adam and just tell me completely what to do with my life. That is crazy. And that is how a lot of women end up in abusive situations, but not just abusive situations, but situations where they're completely unfulfilled and are told to just be happy with it because that's what women are supposed to want, or yeah, something like that. And so when we look at the gender equality perspective, I've put everything into 3 categories. And so I put home, relationships and workplace. Are we given equal rights within the home? When I was growing up, okay, cool. On my mum's side, it was just my mum. On my dad's side, it was my dad and my stepmom. And a lot of the times in that relationship dynamic, and in a lot of the other relationship dynamics that I witnessed, you could ask your mum for something and she'd say, oh, you have to ask your dad. Because she wasn't given the sovereignty to make a choice, and he trusts her as an equal within that home to make a decision. I've even seen, like, women who do everything for the household still be treated like a child under the household, even though they're the ones that are actually in charge. This is why I say that the men are insecure, because why do you feel like it's not, there's nothing wrong with being a leader in your home. Of course, that's what the parents are, but even leaders get it wrong sometimes. And so when you have someone working with you in the environment that you're building together, you should be able to meet eye to eye and make decisions together. When it comes to relationships, it's kind of like the same thing. Wait, let me go back actually, because that one was more focused on relationships, specifically parent relationships. But when we go into the home overall, I was watching the Spiritual Baddie on YouTube. Shout out her. I might even tag her below. I love her videos. But and she was talking about her mum and how she had 3 older brothers, but her mum made her start cooking at 7 for her 3 older brothers because she's a girl. And that's not fair. Why should my brothers not know how to feed themselves? Why should the oldest not even... When she said that, I said, okay, I've obviously heard this dynamic in different ways, but 3 older brothers, your oldest brother's 14, and yet it's still you that should stand behind the pot because you have a vagina. It's not serious. And I'm sorry that happened to her, but Cindy's amazing anyway. Sorry. I feel like when I say that I'm gaslighting someone's experience, I'm not. I think it is just a thing of having hope that that's not going to define you forever. Cool. The last thing about gender equality is in the workplace, and like I said, some changes have been made. You can see to be fair, I did quantity surveying and commercial management at uni, and there was a fair amount of girls on that course, yet alone a fair amount of black girls. Like, there was a handful of us, maybe guaranteed 3, because me, Ella, and Beryl. I don't remember if there was any more black girls, and I'm sorry if there was. My attendance was 8%. But the point is that we're allowed to be in these spaces now, where construction completely was just a men's job before. And like I said, that is an improvement. But whether we're all the way forward in where we should be or where things could be, definitely not. And when we think of equality in the workplace, I think it's that everyone should have equal rights to opportunity regardless. A lot of the times, like, there's things that you can't fight about your gender. For example, I know, whether they're going to admit it or not, there's people who hire men over women because there's less chances of them needing to take 12 months off because of a pregnancy, even though there's paternity leave now. And this is the way in which, like, it's changed as well for other people. I was watching a movie, I didn't get to watch the whole thing. It was called Sex as a something, I don't remember. It was on BBC, and it was about a court case. It wasn't Reed versus Reed, but they used that as a reference case, which I remembered from college, which is the only reason why I remember the film. And basically, there was a law around maybe tax forgiveness. I don't remember what that thing is called. Tax relief for caregivers. But that caregiver was only defined for women. And so when there was a case that came up with a man involved, they literally went to court to change the whole law's perspective around gender and whether or not a man could be in a domestic position. Why isn't he capable of giving care just because he's a man and he wasn't married? That was the fact as well, where he was a caregiver but he was an unmarried man, and so they said that by definition that can't be so. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. And they was saying how it's mainly women that are caregivers and things like that. The next thing is about traditional gender roles. And so it was about caretakers and family and home, which I touched on a little bit, but there's more to go into it. And so the next thing, I interpreted it through motherhood and family responsibilities. And the 3 categories I put them into was parentification, power dynamics, and career and goals. And so parentification is, as girls are being raised, we're not raised to be ourselves. We're raised to look after everybody else. And I thought that might have just been my experience because I was born to a young mom. She had mental health, and so it was just me and her in the house. I had to kind of look after her because she wasn't in a space of being able to look after herself mentally and look after me. And I'm not Ebony. I'm not discrediting my mom. Of course not. But it literally formed my whole personality of going everywhere and trying to look after everyone. If someone has a problem, I automatically pick it up because I feel like, I don't know, I have to do that. The other day I was at the train station and there was a lady next to me. No, there's 4 seats, yeah? I'm on this seat and there's a lady on this seat and there's a water bottle on this one. So a lady comes and she sits her son here and then she asked the lady, is this your water bottle? And I just picked it up. I just picked up the water bottle and had to go find a bin to put it in. And then I walked around the station, the platform, obviously looking for the bin. Like, who actually asked me to do that? And why did I do that? Why did I feel like I needed to do that? The lady had a little issue. She didn't know if it was her water bottle or she just wanted to sit down. Once the lady said, no, it's not hers. It's because she didn't go to pick it up. She just kind of looked at it. And I was like, okay. And I picked it up. But again, that was none of my business. And I've gone through life doing things like that where someone just said something and I feel like now it's my problem to solve. It's my problem to solve. And it really wasn't. And I've given myself a lot of stress because of that as well. The next thing is about power dynamics, which again I touched on a little bit, but of not being able to speak up, of not being able to, like, just seeing the freedom that boys were given that girls were not given. That was frustrating. And I understood it from the sense of, well, girls, quote unquote, are in more danger because of the sexual dynamic that people are raised in. But we don't even deep how all of it from the root of how you raise your children makes people feel like they can violate women because you don't give them the sovereignty to say yes in general. So when it comes to that, it's also like, oh yeah, well, that's what you're here for. And yeah, it's not great. The next thing about traditional gender roles is also career and goals. So again, as an educated young woman who runs her own business, there's some people who are like, oh my gosh, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, thank you. It is. Don't get twisted, I'm grateful. But also it shouldn't be weird. It shouldn't be an anomaly. It shouldn't be something that we single out as, oh my God, that's a woman who's doing that. Yeah, it is. And then, on the other side of it, there's actually people who have a problem with it. And I've been with a partner who, at the time, I didn't even clock what he was saying. It was when I was starting to volunteer and, you know, building a little rapport for myself in the community with all the work I was doing. And one day he literally just said to me, I wish I could just pay you to stay at home. I said, I don't want to do that. But I thought he just meant like, because he saw I was tired and da-da-da-da-da. But then it was years later when I was looking back at it, I was like, no, he wanted to control me. He felt like he was losing a grip on me because I have something that's my own. I didn't even have my own financial footing or da-da-da because I was volunteering a lot. But I had something that I was paying attention to that meant my whole life and world didn't revolve around him. And for him, that was a problem. So, yeah. Some people don't like women to have career goals because they feel like it's not your place to, which is absolutely ridiculous. The next bit is about rapidly changing society. And so it focused on education and economic change. And I spoke about the fact that women have greater independence. And some people will say it's good, some people will say it's bad because of the way in which some women have independence. And so that's what I want to go through. The first way in which women have greater independence is through money. And the fact that they're able to make their own money. So now I don't have to rely on you for my life. There's people that I've spoken to where literally their mum will tell them, you go from your father's house to your husband's house. And that's how it goes. You never get the chance to take care of yourself. And that's very dangerous because years later, if your husband becomes sick, if something happens to him, if you decide to split up, you then have to crawl not knowing yourself or how to look after you because you were never given that space to. And oftentimes or not, when you enter a dynamic where you've gone from your father's house to your dad's house, and it's in that space where you're not allowed to be yourself, it's going to be really difficult trying to learn yourself after being one way for how long. And so, yeah, women being able to make their own money gives them leverage. They're able to leave if they need to leave, especially when it comes to abusive situations. It's like, I don't actually have to stay here. So, yeah. And you'll just find that they settle for less. They settle for less. Because it isn't about their survival anymore. They don't have to depend on a man for that. The next bit was about power. And so I said that women have a greater independence through their own personal power and saying, no, I'm not dealing with this. And that's why there's so much talk around boundaries right now, because for a lot of us as women, we weren't taught to have boundaries. We were taught to give everybody access. And that's how I was raised. And I mean, genuinely give everybody access because of what benefits that brought to my parent. As in, it meant that people, he could use me as a scapegoat, and then also he could get what he wanted. And when I finally started saying no and taking back my personal power and establishing my own independence of, wait, I don't actually have to be in this dynamic with you where you're taking so much from me, but then you little girl me so that I don't see my own value and worth. Now I'm actually looking at my own value and worth, and I understand my personal power and the fact that I don't have to do anything. I don't owe anybody anything, not even my parents. That was huge for me because I had someone who was taking the piss completely and would never ever reciprocate. And so, yeah, just the independence that comes from knowing yourself and knowing what you want to do, what you choose for yourself, and then stepping into that is huge. It's scary, but it's necessary. And then the third way in which I said that women have more independence and that society is changing is through sex. And there's different sides of the coins to this, because for a lot of time, women show this would be public indecency. I could get arrested for walking around like this once upon a time. And so being able to own my own energy and my sexual energy, which is my creative energy, is very empowering, because then now it allows me to be my unique self, and it allows me to see what aligns with me, and specifically like do more stuff in my business that I want to do. For people who don't have a business and stuff, it will allow you to live your life more fulfilled. And then on the other side of it, because for a really long time there was that shame around sex, the sex industry, which is huge by the way, was like, it was so hidden and so behind closed doors, and because of that there was a lot of abuse to women who were even making their own money, but then they were in dangerous situations. Now, because of softwares like OnlyFans, and because of just people owning it more, of yes, I'm a sex worker, or I take pictures of my feet, or I do this, or I do that. Initially, I used to cringe. I used to be like, oh my God, how is she saying that? How is she doing that? Like, but then at the same time, it was like, it's huge. I don't think people understand what the amount of confidence it takes to do that. And so that was kind of the last point, except the fact that men used to run the sex industry, and they would pick up women and they would basically enslave them. And now women don't have to be enslaved to someone where they're selling their body and this person's taking 70% of what they're making. It's crazy. Now, I know there's going to be some mixed opinions about whether or not the sex industry is right and this and that. But at the end of the day, it exists. And so the less we ignore it, the more we can actually go in and regulate it to make sure that women are safe when they're in that space. And men too, but specifically for women who have been maltreated for centuries. The next thing is about religious and cultural interpretations. And so it was about the definition of a woman. And a lot of the definitions of a woman are through religious interpretation. So I was watching a video the other day on Instagram, yeah. Sorry, I'm laughing already. Let me calm down. Let me even drink water. And this guy was saying, I don't say that my woman can't dress how she wants because I'm insecure. I say it because if she loves Jesus, then she won't dress how she wants to dress. She will cover up herself and she will be modest and she will this and she will that. Now for me, the way I dress is a part of my expression. I personally suppressed my sexual energy for a really long time. And then even away from my sexual energy, I just suppressed my creativity in terms of who I wanted to be, what I want to look like, what I want to say, who I want to be, all of those things. And there's a lot of people who will say that you are going against God when you're choosing stuff for yourself because of their own interpretations of what their holy books say. Now, if we move over to Islam, I have a Muslim family. On my mum's side, my grandma was Muslim in Nigeria, and then when she came to the UK, she became Christian. On my dad's side, my granddad was Muslim and my grandma was Christian, but she converted when she married my granddad. Then they split. She was Christian for a while and then she's Muslim again. And for me, it's hard. I don't want to say that. Okay, let me not talk about them. Let me talk about my great-grandma. My great-grandma was a medicine woman in Nigeria, but she gave up a lot of her practices. She didn't give up her practices, actually, but she gave up what she wanted to do for herself to be with my great-granddad. And he had multiple wives. And so I'm like, so if he had other women anyway, well, why don't you just be yourself where you are? But anyway, it's not for me to judge, it's not for me to say. It was a different time and all of these things. But some people are still in those dynamics. And so within that says how you're supposed to be. When I was Muslim, I took my Shahada in 2021, I believe it was. And then I was reading, I remember I just flicked to a random part of the Quran, it's so funny. And it was saying that when you leave your husband, a woman can only move on. Okay, basically there's a 3 months probation period after you decide you're divorcing, right? And the man can decide to come back to the woman, but she can't leave for someone else until 3 months after that. And so it's just little things around that in terms of if your religion says that you have a lower point of sovereignty. And I'm not trying to diss anyone's religion, by the way. I am just saying that for a long time, if you did want to make a choice for yourself, you wouldn't allow yourself to because you feel like God is going to hate you and you feel like God is going to send you to hell. And a lot of those things preach hatred and fear and make you hate yourself for even wanting to do those things, and you judge yourself. And then also, make you scared as if something's going to happen to you because you're thinking this way. And then you then start to judge other women. I have she's not even my actual niece, but I have a niece. She's 10 years old. And she said to me that she goes on YouTube and she rage baits this stylist because of the outfits that she wears. They're outrageous. She got forced to start wearing her scarf when she was like 6 or 7. And so I understand it from that perspective of, okay, because you think that this lady is doing something wrong, and maybe there is a little part of you, of course she's a kid, and when she asks questions about things, she's not allowed to, and so you can then grow a resentment towards other people, and that contributes to the lack of sisterhood that we see within the female community. So I spoke about dress codes and people saying that if you're one way you're godly and if you're another way you're not. The other one is about family roles and leadership. And for a lot of people, they go they go to their religion for... I'm speaking based on people that are close to me, right? And my own experience. But when it comes to family roles and leadership, there's a guy who's abusive to his wife. And when he abuses her, he will pull up parts of the Quran that say that she's not supposed to argue with him. And that a husband is this to his wife and all of these things that make her feel like that treatment is okay. And it's the worst religious gaslighting I've ever seen. I've been religiously gaslighted by my own family. When I told them that my cousin touched me when I was younger, my grandma on several occasions said, well, I'm a woman of God. And so if you believe in God, then you will let it go. And you will accept that because you're pretty, things like that are going to happen to you. And I'm just looking at her like, my God is a God of truth, not a God of sugarcoating. That's the best I can describe it as. And so for a lot of people, I feel like, just generally, not even just for women, a lot of things are just, you put the sticker of religion on top of it and you don't actually address the issue or address the pain. And that has led people to be in trauma for ages, to stay in abusive relationships for a really long time. Especially like when I was growing up and I used to go to church, obviously we all know how gossipy the aunties are. And if you're having problems in your home, you don't want to tell anyone because they're most likely going to blame it on you. And then if you want to leave, they're going to come and tell you that God doesn't like that. Or your family will tell you, hey, that doesn't look good, and all of these things. And then it'll be on the front of because of God. And really, it's just about your ego. You just don't want to be the topic of conversation because you've been the woman talking about other women's children before. Yeah. And then the last bit was about our roles in society and the stories that are told about women in the Bible. If we go to Eve destroyed humanity. Why did she eat the apple? The apple brought in knowledge and wisdom, which meant you had to face the duality. It meant that the dark was then introduced and now you have pain and you have pleasure. That's my own personal belief. Not everyone believes it that way. But some people will actually say, oh, it's all because of women. The Jezebel spirit that's spoken about in the Bible, other than on the internet and like in conversation, when do they refer to men as Jezebels? When really they're the ones who sleep around the most. Like historically. And I'm not saying this to point a finger. This video is not men against women. This video is just pointing out different things that impacted the way that I felt about myself as a woman. And I realized, hold on a second. Where did this come from? Because as far as we know, none of the books were written by women. God didn't choose a woman to scribe. When we go back to ancient Egypt and Kemet, there were loads of women in power. There was inequality. And so I think that as well, it's representation. How are women represented within the holy books? I think there's only 1 or 2 women that I've heard about being in power in a religious context. But there was still something about her story to disempower her. I don't know everything in it, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I do. And I'm not saying that anyone's religion is wrong. I'm saying that these concepts and ideas can have an impact on a young girl growing up who's trying to figure out herself and trying to figure out who she wants to be. Before I even tried to figure out who I wanted to be, I had to figure out the fact that I'm allowed to choose it. Because I kept on saying, who should I be? Who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to be? Things like that. The last part is about women as leaders and change makers. And so it was about women being agents of change. And for me, it's about worldwide change. And the categories were politics and social movements, science and innovation, and then international diplomacy. And the feminine energy has always been the nurturing energy. Mother Nature is called Mother Nature because of her ability to produce, to create life, to sustain life through nurturing. And I feel like they locked women out of very powerful positions for a really long time because she would have brought in the emotional element. Then we had the period of time where women were appointed so that it looked equal, but they were still choosing women that were completely disconnected from their emotions. So they don't mind screwing over nations. They don't actually care about the community. They're just as greedy as the men who are in charge. And so it's like, for the women who actually wanted to do good, for the women who maybe weren't so much into the capitalism, they probably got knocked out, and that's how we moved into a patriarchal society where everything was about the masculine energy, about going to get it, and not about being still and receiving. And when we actually think of that rebalancing, in order to receive, somebody has to be given. But if everybody is in their masculine energy of go get it, take, who's giving? And now we're at war. Actually, there's wars going on. Actually, there's people warring in the streets, as in, yeah, fighting, yeah, gang violence and all of that stuff. But also, in the entrepreneurial world, I've tried to work with, like, it's hard. Because, of course, I want to see everybody win. I've just come to the terms that I can't do it with everybody because not everybody has the same mindset. Some people do feel like, oh, there's only room for one here. And they will do what they need to do to get to their success. And unfortunately, that's just the climate that's been created. But I think that the more women who are in tune with themselves, who get into positions of leadership, they're not going to create anything that's not going to be beneficial to someone else because they won't have any cruel intentions. They won't be inflicted by greed to the point of only I can have it. That's why we need to reestablish what abundance actually is. And the fact that the universe has loads and loads and loads and loads to give, but they've created funnels of access, which you have to learn. You have to learn and unlearn. What you've been taught is possible and achievable for you. And before you even go to dreaming big, sometimes it's like, damn, can I even just exist as I am as a woman? Because everybody seems to have a problem. Yeah. We also spoke about, obviously we spoke about political and social movements, international diplomacy, and then when it comes to science and innovation, we carry the intuitive knack, you know? Everyone has intuition, of course, but because we have our wombs, it comes a little bit easier to us, you know, second nature. But that, we've been taught not to trust that. If I literally feel like I understand this thing because my body is kind of showing me the root of it, the journey of it, then I'm going to trust that and I'm going to follow it. But because a lot of women haven't been raised to listen to themselves at all, they've always had someone who is the not supervisor, they've always had someone who's their superior. When they are getting these signs from their body, whether it's warning signs, whether it's a inclination to do something, like, oh, jump on that, oh, I like that, that comes natural and it's unique to you. What comes to your intuition isn't going to come to mine. And the more that people start to trust their intuitions, the more progression we're going to see in society. And so I think at the end of this video, all I can really say is to find out who you are as a woman, not who you're supposed to be. And that means that you can take your own interpretations of everything. That I'm not saying, I have to say this, I'm not saying anyone should leave their religion at all. But do ask questions. Because I know that when I was in Christianity and when I was in Islam, I was shunned and isolated for asking questions. And that's how I ended up here and having to ask myself questions and ask the universe to reveal answers to me in different ways. You'll find your own answers in different ways, but you can only find those answers if you're not scared to ask. And because of the way in which we've been raised, or the way in which we've been told girls or women are supposed to be and what we're here for and our function, we don't do that. We don't allow ourselves to be explorers and adventurers, and yeah, we need to be doing that a lot more. And so yeah, happy wife, happy life. That's overall, whether you're a wife or not. Marry the universe. And I'm joking. My point was to say that they even say if you teach a woman, you teach a whole community. And so the more of us that become educated, and not educated through the sense of intellect, educated through the sense of wisdom. So when things are happening, we can say something, we can help, and hopefully people will learn to give us the space to, and if they don't, then we'll create our own spaces. So yes, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I actually really enjoyed making it, even though I put it off for a really long time because I get worried speaking about stuff like this because I know it's going to trigger, bow, But here we are, we did it. And yeah, make sure you check out my YouTube channel for more videos. Make sure you check out my waist beads, which is all about womb magic and healing and expressing yourself through colors and crystals. And yeah, that is me.